Listening to the Critical Mass Radio Show, Orange County's business talk show, focused on exploring topics of interest to CEOs who are leading middle market companies. With your host, Richard Franzi.
Hello and welcome to Orange County's longest running business talk show. And yes, I am your host, Rick Franzi. And boy, do we have an exciting show planned for you today. Why do you ask? Because Kayla Bartel is our guest. She is the Chief Executive Officer and founder of Humanity HR Consulting. And Kayla, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rick. I'm very excited to be here.
So let's start with your origin story as an entrepreneur. Take us back in time. What's the motivation, inspiration for you to launch your firm?
So it really started pretty organically. I've been in HR over half my life, since 2006. So it's always been my passion. I love people, love what I do. But after years of being in organizations, small to large, huge corporations, I realized all the things that I love about HR and all the things that I see companies doing wrong. And so I had this dream of starting an organization where I was able to directly impact positive culture change for small businesses who maybe aren't able to have an entire HR department themselves, but are able to outsource a lot of those things to us. So this all became a reality in about 2015. I have a son and he was starting kindergarten, and I wanted to have more time to be with him. And so I was working full time for an engineering firm and decided to take the plunge, and I quit, and I started to consult for friends who had businesses who were constantly asking for advice. And I just decided, instead of giving them free advice, I'd start to charge them. So that's kind of how it started. And then it grew and became Humanity HR Consulting, actually, a few years later, as a co-founder with my sister. She also is in human resources. And that's when we really put structure to it. She's definitely a lot more of a structure person. I'm more like the just go do it kind of person. So she helped me, with pricing and, making sure it was actually all legit. And so yeah, she was actually a co-founder, but decided pretty quickly that the entrepreneur life wasn't for her. So she still works for me and with me and is a great partner, but I'm running the show here. So yeah, that's how we started.
Yeah, thank you. That is didn't mean to interrupt you, but that is true. Being an entrepreneur is not for everyone, is it?
It's not. No, it definitely has its ups and downs, and you have to be resilient and tenacious in riding that wave every day. So
yeah, it's always running a business is never easy. That's my experience. But starting a business is the hardest part of being in business, right? In the early days, you were fortunate, it sounds, that maybe you had some friends who would become your clients, and that sort of gets you going. But you need to scale past your close network, and that's where the challenges really can happen. Yep. I'm wondering, over the arc of the life of the company, any pivots that you can share? What have you learned? What's different?
Yeah, so HR changes daily in and of itself. Our great state of California loves to add new laws, it feels like, weekly. So so there have been a lot of pivots in the business. COVID specifically, actually, we were one of the lucky companies, if you will, that scaled a lot during COVID. Everybody realized finally how critical HR is when COVID happened, and they had to figure out, what does all of this mean? These regulations, these restrictions, these safety requirements, leave of absences, all of that. So it actually really allowed the business to scale very quickly. I have a lot of clients that came on at the very beginning of the pandemic and are still long-term clients today. So that was a major pivot in just being able to not just do HR, but look holistically at the business from an operational perspective too, and how things like a major pandemic impact everything we do at work. Obviously, it's led to a lot more remote work. It's led to how businesses manage their workforce. So Major pivot. Other than that, it's been a lot of pivoting around like service models, which I think a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners struggle with is what's the best way to price this? What's the best way to offer this service? And I'm definitely not immune to that. So major pivots there.
Yeah, pricing is a challenge because you want to price it as the most that's reasonable for the value, but you also want to make it easy for customers to say yes. That's always and especially when you customize packages and things, and it's not like, well, here's the thing on the shelf, it's $5, buy it.
Right.
Yes,
right, exactly.
So let's talk about Humanity HR Consulting. Maybe you can help us to understand. You mentioned earlier small employers, mid-sized, but maybe put a finer point on who you help, the kind of the niche that you serve, and the myriad of problems that you're solving for them. And then, if you can, articulate who's like the best kind of client for you to work with. Who gets the most value from working with your firm?
Yeah, so we do have clients from as small as 5 employees all the way up to huge corporations. But our bread and butter and our sweet spot is definitely employers who have 10 to 150 employees or so. That's the sweet spot and where we're able to make the most impact. A lot of organizations that are scaling and growing, what worked for them with their workforce at 5 employees doesn't work at 50, doesn't work at 150. So we're able to collaborate with them and partner with them on how and when to change different resources. I look at phases when it comes to our client approach. So every employer has to have obviously compliance. It's a major part of what, their risk and assessment. So that's a portion of what we do. But where we really thrive is in the second phase. We go in, we get people compliant, we do audits, make sure they're doing things right. But then how do they become an employer of choice? How do they retain that top talent that they've worked so hard to recruit, and make sure that those employees become raving fans of the business and that they're out there selling as much as anybody else because they love their company and what their company stands for. And so really kind of helping mold that positive culture is, I'd say, our ideal client. When we get to work in that way, I feel like all of my team thrives because we can do the compliance part all day long. But it's when we get to really be creative in their approach to employee experience that we get really excited.
So this may not be correct, but I would assume that on occasion you're brought in because they have a need, and the need is usually a compliant need, something they're out of phase with that they need to correct. But
Correct.
Then once you're in there, you begin to have the opportunity to show them how much more that your company can do for them. Is that
Yes.
fair?
That's absolutely fair. It happens with, I would say, 95% of our clients. The larger ones, not as much because they usually have an HR department. So they're bringing us in just to help supplement specific project work. But the smaller organizations, we end up becoming an extension of them and really do just end up becoming their HR department and their HR team, where their employees know us, we know them. We go on site, we get to know the owners and what their vision for their organization is. We're there to take that burden off of the owner so that the owner gets to thrive, or manager or CEO gets to thrive doing what they love. They have a passion that's to grow their business, whatever that might be. Ours is people. And how do we align their people strategy with their operational strategy for the best success for the organization as a whole?
I always have tremendous empathy for the person who has grown up in the company, and when the company, to your point, was a handful of employees, did the HR work, but now they have 10, 15, 20, 30 employees, and they're still expecting that individual to be able to do all the compliance stuff. And it is so confusing, frankly. And you can very easily run afoul of regulations, not if you don't understand it. And to your point, every year there's new case law, there's new regulations, and it's constantly iterating. And things like your employee handbook and manual have to be refreshed on an annual basis at least, right? To stay in compliance.
Yeah, it does. We're constantly revamping them, and the state just has launched this workplace violence prevention plan, which we've been just writing plan after plan after plan to help our clients stay compliant. And yes, oftentimes then as they get to know us and work with us, we're building relationships. And so they're also seeing, oh, wow, you could help with that. You could help with that. And so just more and more ends up getting handed off. And that's what I really love and value about doing this type of work versus being in-house HR, is that I love business. So I get to learn about all of these other companies
Right?
and how they do things. And I learn from that, and I'm able to, see some of their sales strategies or different techniques they use as I get integrated in their business. And that even helps me continue to grow as a leader and a CEO. So I really enjoy it.
That's great perspective. One of the challenges that I'm hearing from my clients who are SMB, Orange County based companies, is the multi-generations in the workforce and the influence now. It was all about the millennials for quite some time, but guess what? Millennials now is becoming all about Gen Z.
Yes.
They're the new ones in the door. And the differences between millennials and Gen Z, just because they might on the surface seem similar because they're younger, they're very different cohort. I'm sure part of the work that you're doing with your clients is maybe helping to become a preferred employer for that type of environment and those cohorts as well. Is that true?
Yeah, definitely. We see a lot of that, and a lot of where we're able to impact that is in communication, actually. Like, I think in general in business, communication is so important. And when it comes to like an SOP, for example, we've started to not just write SOPs for our clients, but we record the SOP as well with a screen share, because younger generations don't want to read step-by-step instructions. They want to watch a video on how to do these things. And so being able to adapt to a workforce and think of other methods, creative ways to get the work done, to communicate the work, the expectations, is a lot of what we do.
Yeah, and I enjoy overhearing conversations of millennials who are now in management, right? Supervisors, managers, directors, who are now managing Gen Zs. It's sort of like, oh, well, now guess what? It's your turn. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about business advice and maybe something that you found valuable that you could pay forward with our audience and share.
Sure. Yeah. So, I thought about this one quite a bit, and I think I've gotten a lot of great advice. I've got a lot of wonderful advisors in my orbit, and they're all helpful. But one of the things I lean on a lot is that everything is figure outable. I teach a lot on psychological safety, and I think at the core of psychological safety, it's about being able to fail in work, being able to make a mistake and know it's okay to make a mistake because you learned from it, and then you're not going to make it again, and feeling like that's okay in work. And a lot of organizations don't promote that. A lot of organizations promote the idea that you make a mistake and we're going to penalize you. And I, from a leadership perspective, come more from everything's figure outable. So if a team member makes a mistake, they come to me, we figure it out together. We're not over here doing brain surgery. We can figure things out together and pivot and ensure that the next time we don't make the same mistake because we've caught it and we figured it out. So everything's figure outable. That's kind of the way I approach my team anyway.
I had not heard that before you and I met previously and discussing having you on the show. And I think that's such a powerful concept, and that especially younger generations who are learning by doing, you have to give them the license to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
Without penalizing them. It's all figure outable, huh?
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've got a new term. Maybe you've heard it, but Rick Franzi had not heard it before Kayla introduced it to me previously. So thank you for that. Yeah. I always love asking that question because I'm never quite sure what the answer is going to be.
Yeah.
But let's talk about artificial intelligence. Let's go from one topic to another. And in your field and for your firm, how do you see artificial intelligence playing out?
Yeah, it's a major topic in HR right now, as it is in every field and industry, I feel like. So AI and technology in and of itself is crucial. So we actually did a blog post recently about how automation in our work, as you pointed out earlier, more and more and more gets put on HR's plate. And a lot of times that's with the expectation of maintaining just one person in a small organization to do it. So for us, we lean heavily on looking at automation and technology in our platforms and what we use, and also what we recommend to our clients in their orbit of HR. So for their payroll, for their performance management systems, all of those things, so that they're able to minimize administrative burden and utilize technology to its full capacity. So that is a major part of it. But in addition, even when it comes to utilizing AI for writing things, there's a lot of value in being able for us to be able to use AI to draft something and then go in and fine tune it. Obviously, we have to. There's a lot of legal things that we're dealing with. So it's not as though we can lean as heavily on AI as maybe some other industries, but we do use it and we'll continue to use it. And my belief overall is that organizations that don't adapt to this will not survive. So I think it's going to lead to actually more growth in employment in different ways. So it is going to be a matter of needing individuals to be able to adapt and learn and upskill basically, so that they are able to utilize it in their work.
Yes, I agree that using artificial intelligence is now table stakes. It's sort of like figuring out how to help you do things, but eventually, I just saw the new Samsung phones had an announcement today, and their biggest part of the announcement was not the new hardware, which historically has been the case. It's all the AI-enabled capabilities that this new phone is going to bring to you. It's like, oh my goodness, it's everywhere, isn't it? I had a guest on our show earlier this year from a large Orange County corporation who said they had to actually, through HR, mandate how people could use ChatGPT, because they were finding in large corporations, people were putting information into ChatGPT that they didn't want public, but it was, and so HR then had to get involved in writing a policy and guidelines on how you use this tool.
Yes, a lot of that. And I've seen a lot of our clients working with HR to look at also not just policy, but expectation of use. So for example, I have one client who they're a global client, right? And so they know that their team may not be able to write something themselves in the way that it would be worded here in the US. So they actually mandate that their teams utilize ChatGPT in their communication to clients first, to ensure that it's professional. And I think a lot of global organizations are doing this. And so in order to keep up, they mandate that as a communication requirement for their teams to lean heavily on AI. Interestingly enough, one thing I'm noticing a lot in the world of talent acquisition is finding it very difficult, because I'll get on a call with a candidate, or a team member of mine will, and you can tell the second you start to talk to them that they had to have used AI for their resume, because what they're saying doesn't match their resume at all. Wow. And so that is a challenge to overcome. It's making that process actually a bit more difficult to discern someone's actual capabilities.
That's interesting. And one of the other things that I've heard from organizations relative to HR and AI is a general discomfort among the workforce about, will AI take my job away from me? And how do you get both the value of productivity gains from using the tool, but also having people feel comfortable with their future in the company also? So it never ends for the HR department, does it, Kayla?
No, it doesn't.
There's always something you're going to have to deal with and figure out. People are so complex these days. I'm wondering if you could share with us your vision for your firm. Where are you taking it?
Yeah. So one of the things that I always talk to potential clients about that I think sets us apart is we're humanity HR. Like, we are about the human component at the end of the day. Yes, there's legalities. Yes, there's AI. Yes, there's all of these other things. But at the end of the day, that's who we are at our core. And we want to see employers adopt the philosophy that when you have a strong organization, when you treat people well, those risks are mitigated. Even if you don't know all the rules, even if you're not following all the rules, it's okay because you're treating people well. So they're not going to come looking for a lawsuit or a problem. And so as much as those things are all very important to us, we really are more about like getting to know the client. So our growth path is about that. It's about having long-term sustainable partners in our clients that have those same types of vision to keep growing, to keep enabling them to scale by utilizing technology, by having a clear vision. Because a lot of our clients don't, they just started a company. And so it's helping them kind of identify their vision and how does their workforce help them get to their vision. So it's a lot of collaboration. It's a lot of growth. We're not an organization that's this like high volume churn. We want quality clients that align with our values, and it's going really well. We're growing very rapidly and adding team members. It feels like every other week, but yeah, it's good.
So you're headquartered here in Southern California.
Correct. Yes.
But you have clients who are not only here, they also have a global footprint, it sounds like.
Correct. Yes. We have a lot of global clients, and the bulk of our clients, I would say, are all in California, whether it be Northern or Southern, but many of them have global headquarters, and then they have offices here. And so, of course, their organizations don't understand not only California rules, but they don't understand federal rules either. So it is a lot of helping them get started here for their offices as they want to expand into the US.
Yeah, I love this conversation by bifurcating the role of HR. One is you've got to stay compliant, and that's sort of as a drumbeat. It's always there.
Yeah.
The other side is building an engaged workforce. And your point of having an engaged workforce is sort of the salve for the wound of an occasional compliance miss, which is really great insight, Kayla, because I think that is true. My experience says that is true. People will give the employer a benefit of the doubt, versus taking advantage of an opportunity, maybe because they were unhappy to begin with. And so the hidden cost savings of having an engaged workforce can really be significant if done correctly. I know it's hard for leaders to continue to speak to a vision because, as we said at the beginning of the show, things change.
Yes.
Businesses pivot, and you have to explain to people why the future isn't what you thought it was going to be because of the externalities or something. And so I think the work that you're doing in that area can be super valuable for an organization, especially, as we said during this interview, you're managing multiple generations who are expecting different things from their employer now, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot about what you'd mentioned when we spoke before about the alligator jaws and how, we will work with any client who needs our support. We know that it's tough being an employer in California. And so if someone comes to us and they already are too far down the path with problems, we're going to help them. We're going to work with them to help them get out of any challenges. Maybe they've had somebody file a claim already and they're calling us as a response to that. Of course, we're going to help them. But we also really want their mindset to be, I don't want to be in this situation again. So let's figure out how to work with Humanity HR to not be in this situation again in a year or 2 years or 3 years. So I guess the best way to put that is we're not trying to just put a Band-Aid fix on those types of challenges that come to employers, but it's really to get to the root cause of it and make sure it doesn't happen again. So.
You were talking earlier about creating advocate employees. My term.
Yes.
And my initial internal thought was, how rare is it to hear an employee raving about their employer, right?
Yeah.
Many times that's not the case. They are
Right.
taking the
Mhm.
employer to task for whatever reason, and that does create an interest in the employer by their friends and their network, and
Mhm.
that's a great way to build culture too, is by
Absolutely.
finding people who like to hear good things about your employer. So your employees can be your number one advocate in the marketplace for
They
hiring,
sure
right?
can. Yes, absolutely. I think one of your guests was talking about Nordstrom and how the
Mhm.
culture was just so phenomenal. And again, like we understand smaller clients can't be a Nordstrom. They don't have the financial capability to maybe implement a lot of those practices that create that culture, but we can help start to get them there, and it builds and grows, and it does create people who years later are talking about the culture of the organization. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
great.
culture is a funny thing because when done right, it actually is self-reinforcing. You
Hmm.
know that,
Yeah.
and that's the most powerful way to keep culture in check, is that people, they manage it at their level. You don't have to have the leadership doing that. They
Yeah.
set the tone.
Yeah.
But the other thing is a change in leadership over time, especially for large corporations, that culture can become eroded
Hmm.
if they don't put the kind of same energy in that the founder had or the family had when they were privately held. And it's unfortunate to see that happen to a brand that gets tarnished then because of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a
Definitely.
lot of work. And if you're out there and you need an HR consultant who can help you with all of this and more, how do they find you, Kayla? What's your LinkedIn profile? What's your website?
Yeah, so it's humanityhr.com is the website, and we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, as well as Instagram. So they can message on any of those platforms, and we've got a great team of consultants.
And
So
how do they find you on LinkedIn?
it's just Kayla Bartel is my personal LinkedIn, and then there's a Humanity HR page as well. So
Okay.
yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I told you at the top of the show it was going to be a great one. Kayla, you nailed it. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you for being a great guest.
Thank you, Rick. Have a great day.
And I'd like to thank the audience. You've been a part of Orange County's longest running business talk show. Kayla's episode joins our catalog of over 1,500 interviews that we've done over the years. If you happen to be an Orange County entrepreneur, or you lead a nonprofit organization here in Orange County, and you would like to share your story with our audience, then reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm Rick, R-I-C, Franzi, F-R-A-N-Z-I. Send me a message, and we can talk about scheduling you for a future episode. Haley Stern, our producer, and we can get you ready and have hopefully a great interview like we just had with Kayla. And until next time, we all have a chance to be back together. I hope all of your business decisions will move your company in a positive direction.